In 1952, a physicist walked into the U.S. Navy with a proposal to build flying saucers, not metaphorical flying saucers. Disc-shaped craft powered entirely by electricity. No fuel, no combustion, no moving parts, that flew by manipulating the gravitational field around them. He had working prototypes. He had experimental data going back 30 years. He had the support of a colleague of Albert Einstein. The Navy classified his demonstrations. His research disappeared overnight. When he took the experiments to France, the U.S. government shut it down and brought him home. His patents were suppressed under national security provisions. He died in 1985, largely unknown. In 2025, a former NASA lead scientist announced he had run nearly 2,000 vacuum chamber experiments, producing thrust with no propellant, thrust that persisted after the power was switched off, with no explanation that fits conventional physics. The effect he's measuring has a name. It's been documented since the 1920s. It's called the Biefeld-Brown effect. This is the story of Thomas Townsend Brown, and what was buried with him. Thomas Townsend Brown was 18 years old when he walked into the physics office of Dr. Paul Biefeld at Denison University in Ohio and showed him something that had no business working. He had built a high-voltage capacitor, two conductive plates separated by an insulating material, charged to extreme voltage. What made it unusual was the asymmetry. One electrode was significantly larger than the other. When he charged it, it moved. Consistently. Repeatedly, in the direction of the positive electrode. Not from electrical discharge. Not from heat. The device physically thrust itself through space, using nothing but electrical charge. Biefeld, who had studied under Einstein in Zurich, recognized immediately that this was not a known phenomenon. They studied it together, published limited findings. The effect became known as the Biefeld-Brown effect. Brown spent the next decade trying to understand what he had found. His conclusion: there was a direct relationship between electromagnetism and gravity. High-voltage electrical fields weren't just moving charged particles, they were interacting with the gravitational field itself. He called the field electrogravitics, a mechanism for producing lift and thrust, not by pushing against air or burning fuel, but by distorting the gravitational field around the craft using electrical charge. He enlisted in the Navy in 1930. He kept experimenting. He kept finding the same thing. In 1952, he decided to go public. Project Winterhaven was Brown's formal proposal to the U.S. military, submitted in October 1952. The document described disc-shaped craft powered by electrogravitics. Brown estimated that with proper development, craft could reach speeds up to Mach 3. He provided technical specifications, experimental data from 3 decades of research, and a phased development timeline. He wasn't pitching science fiction. He was pitching engineering. He had working models. He had measurable results. The military took it seriously enough to classify it. Brown demonstrated his devices for the Navy. The demonstration results were classified. What happened in those rooms has never been fully released. In 1956, the Air Force commissioned a classified study on electrogravitics, later partially declassified, which confirmed that multiple major aerospace contractors were actively researching the field. Convair, Lockheed, Glenn L. Martin Company, Boeing. All of them, simultaneously. All referencing Brown's work. The report stated directly that electrogravitics research was considered a priority area with significant potential military applications. Then, within 2 years, it all stopped. Not gradually. Abruptly. By the late 1950s, every public reference to electrogravitics had vanished from U.S. aerospace research. The contractors stopped publishing. The military stopped acknowledging it. The field disappeared as completely as if it had never existed. Brown's funding was cut. His military access was revoked. No explanation was given. Without military support, Brown took his research to Europe. In Paris in 1955 and 1956, he ran what became his most dramatic experiments. He built disc-shaped capacitors, flying saucer shapes, and mounted them on a 50-foot circular track, tethered at the center like a carousel. He charged them to high voltage. They flew around the track at speeds up to 17 feet per second. On pure electrical charge. No moving parts, no fuel, no propellant. He filmed the experiments. The French military attended demonstrations. They were interested, seriously interested. Then the U.S. government intervened. The precise mechanism has never been fully documented, whether it was direct classification orders, diplomatic pressure, or something less formal. What is documented is the outcome. Brown's French research program was terminated. He was pressured to return to the United States. The footage was controlled. Back in America, he filed patents. Some were granted. U.S. Patent 2,949,550 describes his electrokinetic apparatus in technical detail. Others were filed and then went silent. Entered into the classified patent system under provisions that allow the government to suppress inventions deemed relevant to national security. Under U.S. law, the government can issue a secrecy order on any patent application. The inventor is legally prohibited from disclosing the invention or working on it commercially. They receive no compensation. The technology disappears. Brown spent the last decades of his life experimenting privately, in his home, in small rented labs, funded by private donors who believed in what he was doing. He continued finding the same effects. He continued being ignored. He died on October 27, 1985. His work was known only in fringe research circles. If the idea that a functioning propulsion technology was classified, suppressed, and then quietly used in the most expensive aircraft ever built keeps you watching, subscribe. Tech They Buried goes this deep every single week. In 1997, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber entered service with the United States Air Force. It cost $2.1 billion per aircraft, the most expensive military aircraft ever built. Its stealth capabilities were revolutionary. Its performance specifications were extraordinary. The B-2 can fly 6,000 miles unrefueled. Its published engine data, 4 General Electric F-118 turbofans, does not fully account for that range at its operational weight and altitude. The fuel efficiency implied by its performance exceeds what the published specifications should produce. In 2002, Nick Cook, aviation editor for Jane's Defense Weekly, one of the most respected military aviation publications in the world, published a decade of investigative research in a book called The Hunt for Zero Point. His finding: the B-2's leading edges are charged to extremely high voltage during flight. The official explanation from Northrop, the manufacturer, is that this is for static charge dissipation, a stealth measure to reduce radar cross-section. Cook interviewed aerospace engineers anonymously. Their assessment was different. The charging produces a Biefeld-Brown effect, reducing the aircraft's effective weight, extending range, and contributing to flight characteristics that the published aerodynamic data doesn't explain. One of Cook's sources, a Northrop development engineer, confirmed the high-voltage charging of the leading edges directly. The conversation was reported in Jane's Defense Weekly. Northrop did not deny it. Thomas Townsend Brown proposed charging the leading edges of disc-shaped craft in 1952. The most expensive aircraft ever built was doing exactly that 45 years later, without ever acknowledging where the idea came from. In 2025, Dr. Charles Buehler, former lead electrostatic scientist at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, founder of the Electrostatics and Surface Physics Laboratory, announced findings from nearly 2,000 vacuum chamber experiments. Vacuum, no air, no ion wind. The standard dismissal of the Biefeld-Brown effect, that it's just ion wind pushing the device, cannot apply in vacuum. His finding: a measurable propellantless thrust force, a force that persists after the power is switched off, a force that cannot be explained by ion wind, magnetic interaction, or any mechanism in classical physics. He co-founded a company called Exodus Propulsion Technologies to continue the research. He is presenting at aerospace conferences. He is publishing. He is credentialed beyond any reasonable challenge. He is measuring what Thomas Townsend Brown measured in 1925, in vacuum, with modern instrumentation, and getting the same result. The mainstream physics community has not explained it. The standard dismissal, ion wind, has been ruled out by the experimental conditions. The force is real. Its mechanism is unknown. Brown spent 60 years saying the mechanism was a direct interaction between electromagnetism and gravity. He was laughed at, defunded, and suppressed. A NASA scientist running 2,000 vacuum experiments in 2025 cannot explain what he's finding using any other framework. An 18-year-old builds a device that moves on its own in 1921. He spends 30 years documenting it. He proposes flying saucer-shaped craft to the U.S. Navy in 1952. His demonstrations are classified. His research disappears overnight. His French experiments are shut down by his own government. His patents are suppressed. The most expensive aircraft in history quietly uses his principle 45 years later, without his name on anything. A NASA scientist runs 2,000 vacuum experiments in 2025 and finds the same effect, with no conventional explanation. Thomas Townsend Brown was either the most important physicist of the 20th century whose work was stolen and buried, or he was a brilliant eccentric who stumbled onto something real that nobody wanted the public to understand. Either way, the effect is real. The vacuum experiments confirm it. And the technology that disappeared in 1957 is flying over your head right now. Drop a comment. Do you think the B-2 is running electrogravitics, or is this the greatest coincidence in aerospace history? Next week on Tech They Buried, the man who invented FM radio revolutionized wireless communication and was found dead on the streets of New York. His name was Edwin Armstrong. The company that destroyed him was RCA. And the story of how they did it is a masterclass in how you bury a technology by burying the man. Subscribe. I'll see you there.